I've got an issue with my York Diamond 8 where this blower motor has some bad cracked connectors or cracked board right around here, that if these are wiggled, I see a little spark down in there and the blower will start going, but then it'll stop. So I bought a replacement part and I'm getting ready to remove it, the old part, to put the new one in. It looks like I've got some sheet metal screws coming down from the top, and the only way to get to them is by unbolting this old unit from the wall, pulling it down, which is connected all the way through up here to the vent, and it looks like I've got about 3 or 4 inches of clearance to pull it down once I unbolt it, and hopefully that'll give me enough room inside there with maybe a short screwdriver to be able to remove and replace those sheet metal screws. Looks like I also have to disconnect the return hose. So this hose right here is connected to the sensor, and it detects if there's no air coming from the blower, this sensor turns off the furnace for safety, because this blower always has to be giving a negative pressure, air pressure, to be pulling gases out. And if this thing's not running, this detects that there's no air being pulled and it shuts down the furnace for safety, so there's no carbon monoxide buildup. The main blower for the unit, you can't quite see it back in there. The main blower to blow it through the house is in this top section, but again, the bottom section, this is it's like an evacuation exhaust blower that pulls the exhaust from the furnace vents and the burners out to the exhaust up to the roof. And that's the part that I need to replace today because it has the cracked circuit board. So I hope it goes without saying that I've already turned off or disconnected the fuse for the furnace in the main breaker board, so that there's no chance of my furnace turning on accidentally in my face and zapping me with something. Yeah, I have what looks like a 5/16 socket, and I'm getting ready to unscrew this unit from the wall. Let me go ahead and while I'm at it, just disconnect this return valve tube. That should be fine up in there. Should have enough clearance to get that out of there without having to remove that sensor unit. All right, let me get started on these. Let me also just point out that the part that was in there, I couldn't find the exact replacement part for the model that it was, but for this York, the new replacement model is the J238-137. It has the same or better specs for horsepower and current RPMs, and it looks pretty much the same. So I have high hopes that it'll replace it with no worries. I've removed all the flange bolts except for this bottom one, which isn't really a bolt other than it's just hold it in place. So that one I didn't completely remove, I just loosened it halfway so that it's not biting in there. And you can see that this whole top unit moves up and down. And I'm going to let it hang down in there as far as it can so that I can get to these top bolts and remove this unit so I can swap the new one in there. It looks like by removing the socket extension, it looks like I can get up in there and get to those with this regular socket. So I'll go ahead and remove those. This top part here, it looks like I could remove the screw, but it looks like it's some kind of adapter that has like weather sealing or some kind of sealing on there, and I don't really want to mess with that top part other than to unscrew the blower motor from it. So yeah, I'm leaving this top one, this top flange piece that's connected to the vent in place, and just removing the bottom blower. Yeah, so these screws are a little tricky beasts because I could barely get my socket set up in there. I was able to loosen all four, but I think the rest of it's going to have to be done either by hand or with a regular wrench, socket wrench. Okay, yeah, the socket loosened up enough that once I lift up on the unit to release the pressure on the sheet metal screw, I'm able to pull them out by hand. I got the other three already, and this is the fourth one. Last screw is loose. I'm going to pull out the old unit. Set that down on the floor. Looks like there's some leftover insulation. I'm gonna use a scraper and get rid of the residual insulation so that I can have a clean surface for the new part to be connected to. Okay, so I've got a scraper and I'm using gloves because I do not want to get that fiberglass insulation on my skin. Done it before and it's quite itchy. I'm not too worried about leaving stuff, letting stuff drop. You can see there's some insulation that's already fallen. There's some ash that's been there for quite a long time. I'm just going to vacuum the whole inside of this thing when I'm done with this, so I'm not too worried about leaving stuff lying around to clean up. Really overkill, but I'm going to use steel wool to smooth down the surface where the new gasket's going to go for the new part. I've used steel wool to smooth the surface it's going to, including underneath this vent adapter. A little bit of rust in there, but it doesn't look like there's any structural issues. All right, getting ready to connect the new part up. All right, let me just quickly point out this induction blower. The old one is part number 70580267, and you can see the 60 hertz, 1.75 amp, 3000 RPMs, 115 volts. I didn't have this part, but I looked online, so I had to go with the closest replacement, and again, it's the same form factor. And this is the 70581837. also known as the A229, same company, the Fasco. And I believe this is the newer model, or the replacement model for the, as I mentioned, the York Diamond 80 furnace that I have here. This thing's, let's see, 17 years old. Haven't had to do much to it other than this, like I mentioned, this sensor with this hose. Early on, when I would switch over from summer to winter, I would get 3 flashes. It wouldn't work, and 3 flashes in the book means that the vent is blocked. And at first I thought it meant that vent. It's like maybe a bird made a nest in it or something and it was blocked. And I paid like 150 bucks for a service technician to come in. And it wasn't until like the 2nd or 3rd season that it happened that I realized that it was actually this tube right here, or rather the little vent nipple right there was blocked, and that's what was causing it. I paid 150 bucks to have somebody come out and take a toothpick and scrape that out, but now I just check it every season myself. It did kind of suck to get these things back in there. Ended up having to use a combination of a regular socket, and then I just happen to have this other one that's shorter, and it helped out on the back ones. And then I also had to use an adjustable spanner. I guess I would recommend for replacing those to get like a nice little stubby, like even shorter than this. This one's about 6 inches long. I would get one that's like about 4 inches, and with as short of a top to bottom profile as possible to get those back in there. Anyway, I put the new unit up on that bottom sheet metal screw and lined up the holes as best I could, and I'm getting ready to put those other 5 screws back in there. I evenly tightened the bolts or the sheet metal screws so that it would give the best even flush mount in there. It's all nice and solid. This part's solid. I put the sensor tube back in, and I put the 2 power leads on there. You're ready to close up the top part. You can see there's an interlock here that prevents the unit from functioning unless that top panel is in place. The top panel is in place. Everything's connected. Before I turn on the furnace breaker, I'm gonna vacuum a little bit in here and just clean up some of this dust. Yeah, it looks like, I don't know if you can see it, I got a little bit of fiberglass, I think, on my pant legs from removing the old insulation, and some of it got on my arm, so it's a little itchy, but not as bad as it could be. Okay, everything's back in. I vacuumed it all as good as it's going to be. Turn the breaker back on. And I think we have to wait a minute for the thermostat to boot up. Okay, looks like the thermostat is booting up. It's interesting. I can see the flashing red light, which I think is the motion detector. Usually when you walk by the thermostat, it wakes up. It's really hard to see with the human eye, but you can really see it in the video. All right. I set it to 70. It should kick right on. See the igniter and then the burners go on down there. As soon as the igniter comes on, I'm going to close the door. Oh, there's the igniter. I put the door back on there. I think you can hear the gas and the burners going now. I can feel a little bit of heat. Let me check one of the registers. I can feel warm air starting to come in. Looks like a successful replacement of the inductor blower for the York Diamond 80.